What's up, everyone? Welcome to Clear Talk. In this video, I'm going to I'm jumping back to the religion stuff. I was supposed to have already done this. I know. I attempted uh, to record this last week, I think it was, and things just weren't going right. I kept being interrupted, and I couldn't keep focused on what I was wanting to get across, so I just sort of scrapped it and was like, I'll just do this later at a different time. But uh, today we're going to talk about God. So sit back. um, anyway, yeah, thank you very much for any support you give. If you like the content and stuff, click, subscribe, like, share, all that good stuff. Check out my other channels. Um, JMD Drummer, JMDPLAY, Discord there. You can do one-time donation there, or you can go up there to JMD Nation and do the $3 a month if you'd like. And yeah, that's uh pretty much it. So okay, so God. So in lieu of speaking about, previously it was hell, and then talked about Satan. And so I said that I was going to try to do this at least like once a week, like the really religious stuff, but it hasn't been the way things have lined up. And like I said, I was meant to do it last week, but just sort of didn't go my way. And so I'm gonna try to do this now. We're going to talk about God. I'm going to discuss it from a uh, evangelical um, point of view that I grew up with, and then I'm going to talk about kind of the more broad like idea and stuff that I have learned from other people as far as like on a historical and archaeological kind of standpoint, from that period and that time and around those, around that whole area, how things. We're going to go into all that, and then in the end, I'm going to kind of talk more in the realm of what I actually like think is the greater idea for for our universe or whatever, where I kind of go, which I think I have vaguely spoke on before, maybe completely, I don't know, can't remember, but so yeah, that's what we're going to do here. All right, so in like the within the frame box of the way I grew up, if you haven't been here for anything that I've previously talked about as far as religion is concerned, disclaimer: I grew up, well, from the age about 5 to 25. I grew up in uh, quite conservative, um, uh, pretty religious home. Not like not like crazy religious. It wasn't like hardcore, like, uh, but so it was kind of somewhat. I guess you could somewhat say maybe slightly casual, but I mean, we went to church every Sunday, every Wednesday. I mean, it was youth groups, children's stuff from early on to the youth group stuff, trips, all those different all those different things like that. And so I learned it very much from a Southern Baptist evangelical point of view. Learned about about God through that lens, and pretty much when you're learning about God, it's basically you're given on the simplest level. You're given like the creation of everything, Genesis, uh, and through the creation story, there was God is the beginning, Alpha to Omega, beginning and the end, everything between, all that good stuff. creating, the 6 days of, creating the uh, you know, the waters and the land or whatever, the sky, all the different stuff, whatever. I can't remember exactly in line. The animals, uh, eventually Adam, and then the whole story, creation story, the Garden of Eden story, all that good stuff. You learn kind of that, and then basically to the lens of Jesus in Christianity, which is basically revolved around Jesus. I mean, it's the religion that came from the ideas and teachings of Jesus. So everything's wrapped around him and his teachings, and his life, being born of a virgin, the whole manger thing, all the ideas around Christmas, whatnot. Then of course Easter, him uh, resurrection. I mean, dying on the cross, resurrection, um, uh, ascending to heaven. Right hand of God, all the good stuff. Like that's in a nutshell. As long as you believe in Jesus and um and all that, and his whole life, born of a virgin, whatever. Not that's not even really that serious. It's mostly believing in Jesus, that he existed, that he died on the cross and for our sins and was resurrected at 3 days later, and you repent of your sins, whatever. That's like the whole, like, really the crux of Christianity. I mean, um and of course you're taught about other little things from God as far as how he conducted uh you know the flood and stuff, this narrative, the Exodus narrative, with Moses, the Ten Commandments, all those kinds of things. All these things that you're just pretty much just placed out. I mean, even as a young kid, I had the children's Bible that taught you. It's very, very simplest of forms. Uh, Gave you each, like, main story that they wanted you to concentrate on, understanding or knowing or whatever, from the perspective that they wanted to give. But so that's pretty much how it's framed. And God is one God, no other God. Any other religion that talks about a God, uh it's our God is the most all powerful. You're not supposed to have any other God before him, so you can't believe in any other God. He's the one true God, only God, blah blah blah. And he's a fearless God, but he's an all loving God, a father. You are his child, we are his children, and all he wants us to do is worship him. We are born sinners, but we, the whole thing. We repent of our sins, believe in Jesus. He sent his son to give to sacrifice for all of our sins, so that we didn't have to make our sacrifices ourselves anymore and whatnot. I mean, the whole thing. Of course, our 10 Commandments, to abide by, all that good stuff. Like that's God in a nutshell, and that's really, honestly, if Christians are being truly honest, that's really all they want you to know. That's all they really want you to concentrate. I mean, it's like you get that bullet point down, and anything in between really doesn't matter. Uh, as long as you just understand that at its crux, that's it. You're good, um, and you'll you're more than likely going to go to heaven and have eternal life or whatever. Like, yeah, there, if you want to, like, at its base, like if you're just a regular follower, believer, that's it. That's really all you need to know. If you want to go up a little bit more in the ranks as far as, becoming something of more importance in the church, or the whatever, whether it's deacon or some sort of minister of whatever, anything. I mean, yeah, you might, be pressed to learn a little bit more, examine a little bit more of the Bible and things like that. Um, of course, understanding the uh, revelations and the whole, rapture and uh, uh, judgment day and all that kind of stuff, right? But I mean, it's like you don't ever feel pressed to learn too much. I mean, if you were to just straight up ask a pastor or somebody, they're like, yeah, read your Bible and learn as much as you can. But if I'm being truly honest, they don't really are not really that concerned with you learning that much. Just the main bullet points and you're good. Like they don't really want you to learn too much. Because I almost to some degree feel like they know if you learn a little too much that you might start questioning stuff, and then they'd have to answer those questions, and they don't really even have the answers. I mean, they have some sort of an answer, but a lot of times, it's not much of an answer. Um, but I feel like that's just like I said, it's just sort of base level. That's what it's about. Um, and that's all you're really concerned with. And while there are other little things that I strove strive to learn throughout my journey. Like I said, growing up in that environment, it's kind of what you were pressed to know. That become your just your whole being. Um, all the your family, most pretty much all our family was I mean, so it's like it's a community thing. It's something that's feels united in your the fellowship of all this. So it's as far as church is concerned, along with God, that's basically the God in a nutshell, though. But the more I learned about things, and then once like I said, up to 25, and I learned about, I started sort of doing a little bit more examining. Certain things kind of pushed me in the direction to do more research and really learn the origins of Christianity and all that it has to say about everything, including God. It put me down this a different journey on learning as much as I could, not only just about Christianity, and I still have so much more to learn. And I feel like that's kind of just the idea, even in you know when dealing with historians or uh, uh, academics or whatever, archaeology or all, like there's still so much more to learn and so much more to examine, and hoping that and knowing that there is more out there that probably could be found and examined. It could give us even more knowledge of the time and area, and maybe even extensions of what we already have, and the excitement over that. That's what continues that research and all that. So uh, that's that's the cool part of all that. But learning more, and here, even over the past couple of years, I've really gotten, like, I had my period where it was like just I learned a good bit about just sort of the basics of understanding the history of Christianity and its origins, and then of course that tying into a lot of other religions or mythologies or whatever, through Egyptian mythology or Greek mythology, or whatever, learn like in their ties and connections, and then of course learning about other different stuff, Taoism, and the sort of some religions and stuff of Asian, the Eastern, more Eastern kind of, all it, um, different things like that. Zoroastrianism, which is has apparently, um, and even have been reminded here recently that uh, had a lot of influence on Christianity. Um, it's these these things have given me, a whole different perspective and understanding of the Bible, of the teachings in it, the stories, God, and how that developed, where it come from, to our best understanding or even guess in mom- sometimes. Um, so it's something that, yeah, I'm not like, and I'm not even close to being any kind of like academic or a historian or anything like that. It's like I even have a hard time sometimes retaining, because it's just so much information that can be given, through different people, different perspectives, and trying to really categorize those different things, or mesh those different things into what I could consolidate to an idea, uh, around it, can be tasking. But I mean, it ultimately came down to, and of course, here recently, it's just been more of me just trying to learn, and learn. Like I said, I had a period where I just sort of didn't even worry about it, because the first initial, and I might be bouncing around here. I understand my thoughts are kind of trying to stay within something, but then I jumped. I apologize. But when I first started, it was like about a year or so of researching and stuff. That ultimately, over a year time, I kind of completely broke from Christianity and considered myself no longer a Christian. Um, it was roughly about a year, maybe not even quite even a year, but it was roughly around a year where I was just like, yeah, I'm not sure I can believe this anymore. I'm just, uh, I don't know what, at the time I didn't know what I wanted to, what I genuinely believe, but I knew that I just couldn't continue following that, you know, um, that path and understanding it that way. I just had such a different view. Um, felt enlightened in the openness of what I could learn, you know, um, and the knowledge that I had not yet attained, that I felt was still out there for me to do so with. Um, and that was it. That was awesome to me. Like I felt free. I felt, all that good stuff. But like I said, I had a period of time where I didn't do much, and then now over the past couple of years, I've gotten really back heavy into trying to learn a lot of more stuff, and getting a understanding of the difference, trying to really get a better understanding of the time, um, the span of years, and that the Bible kind of fits within, and its writings, and who and how, well, to some degree, a lot of it we don't even know who technically wrote them, but if not most all of it, um, but just understanding the period in time, and then the things, the real life things that were going on, to our best understanding, in that area, or throughout the different areas, and even the surrounding areas, um, and how they connect to each other, how, information was spread and how or influenced, um, based in, you know, things as simple as just trade and communication and the sharing of ideas to power struggles and changes, and the influence that those power changes, uh, from kingdoms and dynasties and everything else, how they affected the development of ideas and the change of ideas, that are quite like revealing when you see them in the Bible. Um, just kind of understanding all that and how that all tied into how the progression of of ideas throughout the Bible and ultimately what we have now, um is just really interesting. So when it comes to like God, for instance, I'm trying not to steer too far. I want to stay with, I am staying. I know I've stated a lot of things that weren't directly dealing with God, but we're getting there. When it comes to God, for instance, understanding that you in early, because most of course, the Old Testament is, basically what's considered like the Tanakh or whatever, the Jewish, um, the religious or writings and stuff that are based in Jewish religion from Judea or whatever, Israelites, the originality of the Jews and stuff like that, which a lot of it actually predates a lot of that. But I mean, we're talking about, the idea of different groups in the area and how they ultimately eventually became the Israelites, and how eventually Yahweh became the God of the Israelites. I mean, looking at it from a historical view, um, there's it's even when looking at the Exodus, that is, archaeologically, historically, that doesn't really line up. What's stated in the Bible doesn't really line up. There's no evidence of any kind of mass exodus. I've even seen lately, or thought played with the idea that within the time period of even that happening, that um uh and the idea was that the exodus was from Egypt, but within that period of time, it was like 1400 to 1200 BCE, that uh the Egyptian empire, especially during some parts of that time, actually extended all the way up into a lot of areas that are would have eventually become, Israel and Judea, up to like Jerusalem and stuff. Like a lot of that area was actually under Egyptian control, through some parts of that time. So, uh, I could even see where the Exodus may not have necessarily been even them exiting from Egypt, but Egypt exiting from them. I mean, there's a lot of play that can be thought there, and it just written a different way. Whenever it was recorded at whatever point, um, you know, based in, uh, you know, the agenda of the writer and what they wanted to show. Because a lot, a lot of the Old Testament is based in the idea of Israel just being this ultimate nation that, through all the strife of different people controlling them, the whole people without of nation kind of thing or whatever, and they were always wanting that. I mean, that's like the idea. They were always wanting a king, but it's like, or something, some kind of ruling, some type of land, or a kingdom, and that was like the thing that was oftentimes placed against them by different prophets and stuff, is like as that as if as like a sin, that they kept asking for a king or whatever, and that's like, you don't need a king. um this is that kind of thing, that's the uh a lot of that. So, but you know my understanding is more like Israel come about, or uh, Israelites come about from what appears potentially could have been a lot of different peoples, a lot of different areas, Canaanites to uh, um, different ones. I have a hard time remembering and stating Ammonites or whatever. They're different, all these different like groups of people that at some point come across from some area and controlled or took over or an influence in some kind of way, or what I guess it's not that there was just a one single group of people that come from the same like uh it's the understanding that that whole entire area was like a melting pot of different types of people, with different views and different um beliefs, and they all kind of in some way connected, or they were some way derived from the same ideas, but they were have different names for gods or different names for this or what that. The idea that Israelites, even in its inception, um, was not a monotheistic people. That was the fight that kind of was somewhat uh, played throughout the Old Testament with Moses and everything. You know how and bringing about the commandments. You know, and having no other God before me and things like that. That was kind of the transition of, or supposed to represent the transition into a monotheistic idea. I mean, they before that though, they, or even though the Bible kind of concepts that God was always just one God, or at least that's the overall like encompassing idea that you're supposed to take from it as a Christian. That's not how that started. I mean, you had different ideas, different gods, and things like that way on early on and stuff, and that eventually just sort of over influence from different people, different even very much so from the Persian Empire and Zoroastrianism and stuff like that, which was kind of a part of the Persian Empire, and um, that this uh, these influences eventually molded and created and transformed the idea into from polyistic um, uh, polytheism to monotheism, the belief in multiple gods to one God, and there was transition periods even within that. So it's understanding that like in the beginning, even of Genesis, the first is God is spoke of as El. That was an early God, one of the earliest gods in that area, from the Canaanites and other stuff, other areas. That was one early god that also has connections to other gods and different groups as well. But El ultimately, along with, um, he had a consort, um, and of course, and Baal is it was a son, I think, or whatever, a child of El, all the different things. Some Yahweh was understood to potentially may it, there was some that think he come some kind of may have had an origin around the Egyptians. Also, some may have had an, or I guess think even now maybe had an origin. I think it's the Ammonites or whatever, a group of people that come from a more of the east area or whatever, um, and came into that area and influenced, at some point ruled for a little while, influenced the people that, of the land that eventually became the Israelites. Yahweh was somehow just eventually over time was elevated in the pantheon of gods that they worshipped, and eventually just became the ultimate God, the one that ruled over everything, the one that defeated. I mean, you have the fight between, it's even in the Bible, between Yahweh and Baal. That was because Yahweh, in actual context, that Yahweh and Baal were very similar as far as um, the characteristics and stuff that are associated to them. And so there was this power struggle in reality of, or at least to our understanding of those two gods, and who ultimately was going to rise to power with the people, who was going to, the people were going to take as the ultimate version that they wanted to worship. And this is something that happened through all these different groups, even mythologies, and from the Greeks to the Egyptians, and to the, like, over time, people, gods rose and fell within power, all the different gods, dependent, and then of course across different sections of these kingdoms and groups of people. Um, you know, different gods had different power, or influence, or importance to people, you know, and they rose and fell, you know, throughout time. Different ones would rise to power as being the most highs, and then, you know, another group would come in or change somehow. That would change over years. Another one, same kind of thing. So Yahweh and Baal, that was kind of the fight there, and ultimately Yahweh won. Baal did lost in that, and so Yahweh became the main, you know, God there. Sort of took the idea, even though it was some part, it kind of took over the Ale idea. So he often was, you know, El Yahweh or whatever on some parts. And so, which El kind of eventually, even throughout time, just sort of became an encompassing, like, idea of just God in general, or anybody, or even anything that would be considered God-like. There are a lot of people even connect that to names of people, like uh, Daniel, that'd be in the EL, like, you know, so like a person of God, or um, there's different ones I can't think of right now. That was just the one that initially came to my head. But there are other names also of importance through history that were prophets or something like that that ended in EL, and there was the idea of the godlike thing. That's kind of a, I don't know how hardcore that is, but that's kind of a nice. But uh, this understanding that these different gods had different, and this reason why, when looking at different other gods across the area and the influence that that gave, it's the reason why when you look at the characteristics of someone like Yahweh, oftentimes, and look at Dionysus, there are similarities there very much in different things. Even Hermes, or uh, uh, there's a couple other ones I'm blanking on right. Different gods that had characteristics and stuff that very much paralleled, you know, to Yahweh, and that they were just, you know, worshipped, or you know, as gods, whatever, in different areas. But those influences grew with each other, or somehow grew parallel with each other with the same characteristics. It's kind of completely not understanding of how that happened. You know, whether they both originated from a single place somewhere that we just don't completely know, and they grew with those same characteristics but in different directions with different people, or that they literally organically came from different people that had no original connection, but somehow, just through the natural development of gods and characteristics in people of that area in that time, and how they, you know, just the organic growth of how people worship things, they both kind of just grew with the same characteristics, you know. um the idea that, you know, this group of people would have a, a god that grew with certain characteristics and became, you know, a pretty important god, and in this group of people, the same kind of thing, just with a different name, you know, because they just gave it a different name, grew in the same, you know, you don't completely know. But when the two gods have almost identical characteristics, you kind of have to argue, or at least humor the idea that maybe they even had an original origin, and just somehow just split, you know, in different directions. I mean, possible. But they very much are very close. And in the same way that once you get to Jesus, a lot of the characteristics of Yahweh are placed on Jesus. I mean, that's the idea. Jesus is the son of, he was the son, uh, Yahweh's, God, even though at that point it's not so much considered Yahweh anymore. It's just God, but still, it's the same idea that, the Jewish Hebrew God was Yahweh. So that's what Jesus is supposed to be, you know, he's supposed to be connected to. So those kingdom characteristics were placed on Jesus. And that's the reason why when you look at the characteristics of Jesus and someone like Dionysus as the same very much. It's reason and why some of the same characteristics are there. You know, placing on the whole concept back at the Olympics, and why people got so riled up that the imagery looked like the Last Supper, but then also you wind up with Dionysus there at the end, and that was kind of that play and idea that, hey, these two people had very much the same ideas and characteristics, and that's the same thing. So all these stuff, all these different gods and stuff with these parallels and different and the same characteristics and stuff, but yet they're from different groups. I mean, it's when you start really looking at that, for one, you understand or you start realizing that these are not unique, for one. And that's kind of the concept and idea behind Christianity in itself, is that it's unique. It's behind, Jesus, who is a unique figure. Nobody in history has ever been like him. But then when you start to look and you see all these connections, you realize it's not really actually unique at all. There are a lot of people in history that have the same things happen to them that happened to him, or claim to do certain things that he did, like say miracles and stuff. A lot of people, a lot of gods, a lot of just regular people that the same things were placed on, that predated Jesus, that were years, hundreds, thousands of years before Jesus, having the same characteristics. I mean, you even look in the Bible itself, going back through Jesus's, uh, um, family line and things like that. All the people he was connected to, all the prophets he was connected to throughout the Old Testament, a lot of them did the same things as well, um, and were considered to some precursors to Jesus. I mean, this is you can see it, and when you see it, you realize that it's not so unique, for one. And then you start to realize that all these people were just believing in all kinds of different things, and they were being influenced by all kinds of different groups and people, and how their religious and political views changed depending upon who, what was influenced. I mean, sometimes a group of people would take them over. Looking at the Israelites, that their beliefs were, I mean, it was kind of the idea when somebody took you over and had power over you, you kind of just naturally took in what their beliefs were. You kind of had no choice. And that would, and I mean, there's no way for that to not influence your beliefs. And you take in little bitty pieces of here and there. I mean, it's not that you're technically stealing things. And I can understand the argument of, well, the common argument that Christianity took from this and stole from that and blah, blah, blah. And while there are some things that can be argued that it was very much potentially was, in the concept of the gods and especially earlier times, that's maybe later on you could argue some concepts that came later on after Christianity was developed, later on into the uh, third, fourth century, CE or whatever, and on, something more modern, more recent. Maybe those arguments can be made that was developed at that time, but early on, Hellenistic period and before, which Hellenistic period is within like the 100 BC or roughly to 100 CE. I mean, that 200-year, roughly 250-year span there, with the Roman Empire and stuff. Uh, that period and before, a lot of this stuff was just, like I said, a cooking, melting pot of all kinds of different views and ideas and stuff. And when you put them all together, and realize that people were just being influenced by different things, it didn't originate as one God. People were believing all kinds of different stuff, and then over time, it was sort of just pressed, depending based on different groups that took them over, like the Persian Empire that took over for so long. Zoroaster, that was like a big concept within that, was that there was one God, one main God, and I'm not going into all the details of that, but I mean that the concept there of a monotheistic type of deal had a large influence on the people, and eventually that's what I think one of the ideas of, or one of the things that influenced a more monotheistic um, concept of God going forward. And Yahweh just took that as far as the Israelite people, Jewish, Judea people, um, and which is fine, but it completely takes out the idea that there is just one God and one only God. Um, and even when you play into like what I did before in the Satan video, talking about you really start playing around with Satan and everything, and like I threw up the concept of you know Satan actually may have taken over heaven. Maybe he didn't get casted out, and he didn't. That may reflect the change between the Old Testament and New Testament on how God actually interacted, or how he was being portrayed. You know, uh, maybe it was a genuine change. It literally was somebody different, and we weren't actually worshiping Yahweh anymore. Even though it wasn't like perceived that way. I don't know. There are things like that. Like it's when you get free of the whole just sort of boxed in bubble, um, hardcore literalist like Christian ethos there, that that kind of that holds you to some sort of you know strict standard or strict belief or strict understanding. When you get free of that, you're able to really take in all these different things and ideas, and what has actually been revealed by um, historians, people going back and looking at all these different writings that are outside of the Bible, even those were in, but including words that were outside of the Bible, that spoke of different things and different ideas, and how the time was there, and how people thought and perceived different things. Um, I mean, just even as simple as how even early Christians were not that, like, they weren't that strict. They weren't that in line. There was very many different. And I always thought that coming up in church, I always thought that Christianity like started out one way, and then people over time just divided it up because they didn't want to agree with certain things, and then it got to the point now that we just have so many different denominations and different things. It kind of made this. It kind of looked like this sort of just tree that started out here, perfect religion, and then just came out to we just all different beliefs, and argue over what we want to believe, but actually getting a clear understanding that even this is uh, actually very much going on in the very beginning. That it wasn't just this perfect idea and then suddenly people started fracturing from there. It was fractured to begin with. It was fractured majorly to begin with very different takes on what Jesus's teachings were, and even the idea behind what the Jewish, the Tanakh, the Old Testament, what it actually was trying to say, and think like, and it came down to where certain authorities took control, and it eventually a lot of groups were considered or targeted as heretic, um, not orthodox or whatever, and uh, and it eventually did get to like a center, a orthodox. This is what's true, and everything else is a lie. All these other teachings are heretical, and then we have so now we have an orthodox, and then which was around third, fourth century or so, whatever, fifth century um, CE, and then there's where it was solid somewhat for a little while, but then eventually started fracturing. But in the beginning, it was very fractured, and people, believed different things, and didn't all, and certainly, and very much different things. Like, it wasn't just little nuanced things; it was some very major differences. Um, and understanding all that, I mean, it just you get to realizing that it's just so much more there, and um, while some people learn these types of things and still can find a way to convince themselves to stay there, stay in it, stay of belief, that's fine, and more than welcome to. I just personally couldn't accept it anymore, and so God just became just that, as far as from a biblical standpoint, or historical standpoint. Just a collection, people different, believing different things. There's different gods, a whole lot of different gods. People believe different things in different areas, and all those kind of little bit by little bit intertangled with each other. Some took on the identities of others. Sometimes they were joined together. Sometimes some completely took over, and others were just cast away. So it's like a binding of two or three or whatever. And then one of them ultimately was took over the spot, and the other one was just kind of thrown out so that it wasn't confusing anymore, or something, maybe, or whatever. Or, you know, some of them that take on multiple characteristics of others, and then as they rise to power or whatever within a certain, even certain, just a certain group or something. So it's um that's how it is. That's how I look at, and looking from, like I said, a academic way, archaeological way, what archaeology has shown us with these historic, prehistoric, or whatever, early ancient, not prehistoric, but early ancient people, and what they, pottery and things like that, that what they sculpted, what they created based in these different gods and things that they worshipped, and what I or rituals that they clearly had, or whatever. You just realize that not it's not just clear cut what's taught in church. So yeah, that's from there. Now, for me personally, um, I've taken a little bit more of a astrological concept here. I think it goes back further than that. When you look at all the gods that started in the beginning, even going back to the earliest of earliest, it all derives from worshiping of what people saw, what people thought gave life or altered life, or things that were in the cosmos and whatnot. So these were just, you know, became these were worshiping of things that you could see: sun, moon, water, the earth, air, sky. But then going out from that, stars, planets, uh, all these different things that were eventually, that people in early times considered was a part of the universe, a part of them that they were connected to, that they knew certain things, and then the things that they knew, you know, influenced or altered certain aspects of their life, as far even coming down to their survival, were the strongest of that. Sun is the reason why a lot of times the sun is one of the strongest connections of gods and stuff. That was or storms, lightning, uh, rain, things like that. I mean, these were all very strong. The closer to you and the more that they affected you or could have effect on you, the stronger that belief or connection was, the stronger that God was, um, that that worship was, because you knew that that was something that ultimately could affect your life, your existence, your survival. So you prayed to it, you worshipped it, you hoped that it would, you know, certain things would happen to make sure that you had different things, food, water, things to survive with, tools. I mean, whatever the case. Um, and eventually, those beliefs, and those in these material things that we could see, we could connect to, ultimately, eventually became, they formed deities around that to represent them. And then over time, those deities started to just sort of develop into a little bit more materialistic, a little bit more of a a stronger existence. And then eventually, they clearly started being represented in people, even, I think, to some degree. And people became of importance. And then, ultimately, like I said, you had, I think that's just, that was just the evolution of belief and the strength around certain beliefs or certain characteristics that, you know made your strongest gods in time. And, I mean, that ultimately, eventually, became a figure like Jesus, and influenced major religions in the world. So yeah, I think that that all ultimately goes back to the cosmos. When I take it a step further, I understand and know, when I look at different things in the cosmos, or even things connected into science, into biology, of us, the world, plants, animals, uh, air, all the way down to the smallest molecules, energy, and everything's, for me, is connected. Everything is, there. I feel like energy itself connects everything, connects all people, all living beings, all the earth. It connects air, sky, throughout all the universe, sun or stars or galaxies. And ultimately, when you break it down, um, that is what connects us all. I feel like there is this energy that connects us all, and it's through that you can, that different things are influenced. I think, in the collective of the universe, those are influenced. Even to the degree, uh, of positive and negative. When we think of energy, you think of, batteries, positive, negative, neutral. If you put that on a scale, so change your, um, uh, good versus evil with positive and negative. Um, I think we influence, as a whole, we influence that balance constantly, depending upon how we introduce energy in and out of that balance, as a collective, as a whole. Um, so when you even break down to the most simplest thing of uh, just say, on a personal level, when you oftentimes think of, if you want to be positive, be positive. If you're going to be negative, be negative. Or if you place positivity towards somebody, you more likely to reciprocate positive. Or if you put negative towards somebody, you're more likely going to get negative from that. It's the same concept there. The more positive we project, um, into the collective, the more the balance of that collective is positive. The more negativity that we place into that collective, the more negative the collective is. That's the way I view, and I think that can influence the balance overall for everybody. And how that energy affects and interacts with everything, with um from from people and connections to groups to nations to worlds, civilizations, uh to even the matter and things around us. I think it connects in to some degree to all of it and can affect that in a positive or negative way. Um, that seems maybe way out there, um, but that's just how I view the universe. I think there is some central energy that may have, everything may have originated from somewhere, not sure where, that, may have ultimately sculpted and bloomed what we know as the universe at some point. I don't know. I am not sure that there's a way to know. Um, but and you might want to argue that, well, that sounds similar to God, and sure, but I'm not. I might can even give you that to some degree, but I'm not creating a being around it. Not um, and I'm not saying that that energy or that power is like watching over us and has some kind of grand plan and is create like judging us and has some place for us to be at some point or what like it's just we just exist in it. It's an energy, not sure where it originated. I'm not even I wouldn't even can't even really would say that it still exists. you know Sometimes origins don't have to infinitely exist. They may create stuff and then that creation takes on a life of its own and it fuels itself and the origin can die. I mean, um just like you look at stars and stuff. I mean, they live and die, and then others are born from it, or like it's this it just takes forever. Like the time span for this energy of the universe is on a much grander scale than what our small, minute, minuscule time is here within this energy. But I'm saying you can you see what I'm talking about there. If you follow me there, that's the way I look at it and view it. I think we just exist within it. That we're just a result of some energy of origin somewhere in the universe. Could still be there, could not. But we are just the evolutionary spawn of that grew in the perfect conditions. And I'm not saying we're the only conditions. There very well could be other conditions somewhere else that have the same growth or similar. It doesn't necessarily even have to be the same, maybe similar. Um, so yeah, that's that's kind of where I go. It might seem crazy, and that's fine. I mean, or maybe you can understand, or even to some point, kind of get it. That's cool. Um, not mean that you have to think that it's real or believe it or something. Or I'm not trying to say that hey, come to my side. It's just that's where I land on the whole greater power concept. I think now over time has just a deistic figure that most people call God. So thank you very much. I know this is a long video, um, but I kind of feel like these kind of have to be if I really want to get my point out or discuss what I want to discuss. I hope that it met your expectations. I don't know. But yes, if you want to further the idea, if you want to expand on it, if you want to, um, any of it, anything that I've spoke on in this video, if you want to correct me on something, not, I know I probably didn't get everything perfect. I wasn't really trying to, but just my understanding, my vague, half absorbed understanding. I know I don't get everything exact. I'm not trying to, but it does. Getting it exact is not the point. It's just the overall encompassing idea. But, um, anyways, thank you very much. If you anything you want to like talk about or something, leave me a comment or expand on it or whatever. If you just want to open up a different point to it or whatever, it's fine. I welcome it. Let me know in the comments or just speak on it and other people can talk about it. However, and then the next video, I guess I will expand into heaven now that I've talked about God. So we done hell, then Satan, God, now heaven. Um, and then maybe Jesus. I don't know. We'll go somewhere. Let me know what you want me to talk about next. If not heaven. Anyways, thank you very much. And the next time, been Clear Talk. Peace. I'm out.